everybody. Today we're here with Brian Kato, who's an SEO expert and independent businessman himself. And today we're going to talk all about SEO and what you can do to help out your business and how this applies to your business. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing well, thank you. And thank you for taking
Kevin.
the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go ahead and start with the obvious, because there's a lot of misconceptions around this term SEO. A lot of people don't know what it is. It's just kind of like a fugazi to a lot of people. So could you set a good baseline definition for us of what SEO actually is?
So yeah, SEO or search engine optimization, essentially what it is it's positioning your website so that it appears more prominently in search. And that could be if someone's looking for, say, an auto mechanic near me, or if they're looking for a restaurant or, a particular service, a particular business. The whole idea behind SEO is there are different stages in which people kind of go through what we call a buyer's journey. They don't know what they don't know, right? And so if they don't know that if they don't know the name of your business, you want to be positioned so that if they're looking for something like, I just know I need a mechanic, that your business will appear when they're looking for, let's look for a mechanic in Fort Collins, or let's look for a mechanic in Denver. You want to position it so that your website appears within that search. And so the way that can be done is there's a variety of different coding type methods. There's a variety of content type methods. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just positioning your website so that when someone is looking for a particular service and may not know the name of your business, you appear in that search.
Awesome. I think that's an excellent baseline definition, especially as we get into the rest of this conversation.
Sweet.
So you offer these services professionally, right?
I do.
And so what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in their business, say like a new real estate agent, a freelancer, pretty much anybody just starting out, but they can't yet afford to hire a professional like you?
So the very first thing I would recommend to anyone is if you can get a Google My Business listing, and that's relatively simple to do. You can go to business.google.com. There are a couple terms of service that you need to be aware of, but one of the first and foremost things is you need to determine whether you're a service area business or you actually have a brick and mortar type business. And it's a really, you could go through the entire terms of service, but really what it comes down to is, can people come to your place of business during your stated business hours and request service from you? So if you have, let's say you're a realtor and you don't want people showing up at your house for a variety of different reasons. It could be that, it's your personal home. Maybe you're running out of a home office and you don't necessarily want someone just showing up at, 9 to 5 and saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about real estate, or, what kind of listings you potentially have to offer. You need to set those businesses up as what we call a SAB, or service area business. And basically what that does is hides your address. There are some nuances to that, but the long and the short of it is that by hiding your address, you'll still be featured in Google Maps and you'll have a Google My Business, but your address is just hidden from the general public. So that's probably one of the first things that I would always recommend someone to look at. The other thing I would always recommend someone to initially start with is have a plan when you go into this. This is probably
that's critical.
At a professional level, this is probably the biggest fail that I see most businesses run into, is that they just jump into it and they're like, well, we need to be on Facebook.
Oh, exactly.
Like, okay, well, why? Why do you need to be on Facebook? What are the critical things that you're trying to get out of it? Because beyond just a 1 month, 2 month, or even 12-month strategy, what is it that you're trying to get out of it? Do you want people to understand where you're at? Do you want to engage with people? Do you want to let them know about your product, services? Like what's your overall goal? And having that plan is just something that I don't see a lot of businesses do. They just jump right into it and they're like, we need to be on Instagram.
Exactly. I run into, clients and like that, whatnot all the time. They expect just sort of throw it up there and call it good. And they haven't clarified their objectives. They haven't set any sort of goals, what they're trying to get. Or I see musicians and artists do that a lot too. A lot of want to just upload it to SoundCloud, call it good, hope to get discovered. And that's definitely not how the world works, especially anymore.
Right. And it really, it comes down to get a desk calendar. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Personally, I use a desk calendar and like these, where I can literally go through really quickly and say, okay, so I need this kind of content on these days. I need this kind of content on other days. So using the example of a musician, for example.
Okay.
If we're looking at a musician, I may say every Monday we need to have some kind of like behind the scenes, like, hey, check out the band. This is what we're up to. Or feature one of your band members like, hey, Cameron likes coffee. What kind of coffee do you like, Cameron? And it could be one of those kinds of things where it's more of a behind the scenes or get to know the band members. Every Monday, you just have to have a post like that. And there are a variety of tools that can help you schedule that kind of content. But having that plan in place ahead of time saves you a lot of headache and a lot of hassle, just because you already know what kind of content you need to put out. It's just you create it at that point and publish it.
Oh, exactly. And to elaborate a little further, I always recommend to people, make like a list of content you want to produce and make it all up front at once. That way, say I have 3 months of worth of content in the bank, I could just, schedule the post and then go about my business for that next 3 months until it's time to bank up another, big chunk of content.
Exactly.
And
that's a really good, that's actually a really good point, because the thing is who knows if you get sick, or if there's something that happens to you, if you have a bank of 3 months worth of content and you get sick, well, now you're not stressing about it. You've already got 3 months. So you have 3 months to come up with more content, as opposed to like, oh crap, I got to get this done today.
Exactly.
So you're buying yourself time.
And it becomes a hustle too. If you're producing a piece of content each day, like it can be exhausting, and you're trying to hold yourself to the schedule, and then, people's worst habits take control and they can get lazy, and it starts to get away from them at a certain point.
Yep.
So, moving on to things like, actually, no, I want to talk a little bit more about SEO. So naturally, you come across and talk to a lot of different business owners and whatnot. What would you say to the guy who owns his own business but knows nothing about SEO or barely uses the internet?
So number one, in this kind of dovetailing on the last question, one of the things that I would always recommend to anyone is, if you can afford to, or once you are generating a little bit of business, invest that back into your business. Hire someone, some SEOs, obviously, the more professional and the more in tune they are with their actual craft, they tend to be more expensive. I mean, and that's just with any business. I mean, if you talk to a lawyer, he's going to charge you more than just like a paralegal, right? Just for some like basic advice. But reinvest that back into your business. If you have someone that obviously knows their stuff, that you can trust, it's something from a business owner perspective that can really help out, because let's face it, like most business owners, they have no interest in learning SEO. It's time consuming. I liken a lot, like using the lawyer example, I could potentially go and legally represent myself, if I was charged with some kind of crime. I could do that.
But why would you want to?
Exactly. Why would I want to take the gamble on that? Why would I want to put forth the effort to have to learn all of this stuff when I could just go and say, okay, yeah, it's going to cost me more, but I'm putting my trust into a professional. So to kind of dovetail into the next question that you have, the thing is that the internet is really where everything's happening. People have shifted away from your traditional, yellow book type of thing. It's still being used, but you want to diversify those mediums. People are becoming more savvy, and they're not just going to look in one place. You may see a business on a billboard driving down the highway, and then you're like, oh yeah, that would be kind of cool. Maybe I'll get back to that business at some point. And then you're working around the house. You actually determine, I need that service. What was that one business's name? You're going to go online. You're going to search for it. Odds are you're probably not going to look at a yellow page book or a phone directory. Could happen, but that's why you need to kind of think about a multifaceted approach. Some really interesting statistics I had recently run across here, and just something to kind of keep in mind on this. This was from it was basically like a Pew Research analysis, and based on the number of users that use the internet less than monthly. So keep in mind, this is someone that would use it less than, one search for a business per month is less than 30%.
Wow.
Over 70% of people are using the internet to find businesses that they want to do business with. Beyond that, over 70% of that 70% of people use it, or 70% of it people use it monthly, and up to 60% use it at least weekly. So out of 100% of people, 70% use the internet to find businesses monthly. 60% of them use it weekly, and over almost 35% of those people use it daily.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that 35.
Right? Same here. I mean, I'm looking for stuff all the time on the internet, and like, hey, I want to find out more about this. I search for it, and there you go. To me, that's just a very striking number to think that, 35% of people are on a daily basis going through the internet looking for things, be it services, businesses, some kind of information. And so really, if you're not on the internet, you're missing out on a huge opportunity for your business.
Also convenience too, like when it comes to approaching businesses. So I know with realtors, like, no one wants to call me up and, risk some big sales pitch and all that. Like they'd rather just go figure out who I am, what I do, and then contact me when they're ready.
And that's a great point. The idea of developing the KLT, or know, like, and trust factor. If I can go to your website and I say, hey, this Cameron guy, he looks like a pretty upstanding gentleman. I'd like to do business with him. Let me do more information and a little more digging on, is it going to be Cameron or is it going to be John Doe? What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at your website, and literally within about 30 seconds or less, I determine whether or not I want to do business with you. And so having a website that accurately represents the services you offer, accurately represents the what kind of clients you're interested in taking on. And what I find is the more specific you can be, the better off. For example, if you just said, I'm a realtor, that's kind of a general, it's pretty broad. I mean, but if you said, I help first-time home buyers get their dream home. I work with a variety of budgets, and my job is to make sure that you get in to the best house at the best price. Now as a first-time home buyer, I'm coming to you and saying, well, this guy knows all about first-time home buyers. This is exactly who I want to work with. One of the big fails I see a lot of businesses do is they try and be a me too kind of agent, or a kind of business where it's like, we do that, and we do this too, and we do this over here, and this and this and this, instead of really focusing in on a core vertical or a core demographic that they can follow up on. Now, obviously, if you were focusing on first-time home buyers, and you also were, hey, I want repeat businesses and all, there's no way that you would turn that down.
Exactly.
But really focusing on, each page of your website or each campaign that you're going to run, let's say you wanted to target first-time home buyers, that campaign is specifically targeted towards first-time home buyers. You may run a separate campaign at the same time, but that may be specifically targeting, say,
sellers,
sellers, or people that are looking to, maybe do at this right now. Probably fix and flip isn't one of the best options, but if that was someone that you were interested in targeting, you would have a specific campaign for that. The more granular and the more specific you can get, I find that tends to be a lot more productive as far as the actual kinds of leads and clients that you're going to get.
Oh, and I know that from real life experience too, across a lot of different businesses. I just want to tangent for a minute. I had a marketing client. It was a tattoo shop here in Loveland. And when I came in, they're going all over the place, man. They're trying to sell skateboard decks, glass, offer all these different things. I'm like, do you guys need to pull this away? We need to focus on tattoos. And,
exactly.
I personally think that was probably the biggest shift in their business after I came in was, moving all that away, focusing on the thing. And that alone brought business up. And then everything we built onto there just complemented from that. But once you're trying to distract people, or even in their description, they were talking about the skateboard decks they have for sale and the glass before even tattoos were mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that threw a lot of people off when they were searching for them on Google or just, going across the internet for them, or even on Facebook.
Absolutely. And so the way that Google works, you can kind of think of it as it's called an entity. And the idea behind this is, if I were to say diamond, right? That could mean a lot of different things. First thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is expensive, possibly wedding, things like that. But if I took the word diamond, and within the context and in my content, I said things like, you're scanning the page, and all of a sudden you run across words like Wrigley Field, pitcher.
Yeah, it's weird.
Well, if I had diamond and then I'm saying Wrigley Field, pitcher, MLB, now, like, clearly the word diamond takes on a new meaning. I'm talking about baseball, like a baseball diamond. The same thing could be said for cars, right? If I had a page about cars, I mean, am I talking about a Ford Mustang? Am I talking about the Disney Pixar movie? Am I talking about the 1980s band? So you want to clarify that. It's a process in the industry of SEO. We call it disambiguation. But what you want to do is, whenever you're writing stuff, think about how it could possibly be misconstrued, how it could possibly be confused with other things. This goes back to the way that your content is structured, how you write it, and the other kinds of things that you mention on a page. For example, with the writing, if we said kids make delicious snacks, right?
Okay.
Now, that alone, if I don't put in a comma in particular places, like if I say kids, instead of kids make delicious snacks, I mean, am I some kind of sicko that likes to eat children? Or am I saying, they go into the kitchen and they make, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for themselves. They make things that are tasty, right? You want to clarify that and disambiguate it, because as smart as Google is, it's not that smart. It still understands
text.
Exactly. And so if you're explicitly stating, things like kids make delicious snacks, you might want to think about how that's phrased, how that could possibly be confused, and potentially approach it. I like to approach it with a bit of a juvenile sense of humor as well. Like, is it something that, in your juvenile self, you would kind of snicker about and be like, he said duty, kind of a thing. You kind of
snicker about stuff all the time. So
yeah.
On Facebook, I see stuff that just face palm moments nonstop.
Right. But consider that when you're writing your content. Like, could this, if someone was reading the content, could they look at this and be like, yeah, he said that, or just looking at the way that your sentences are structured, the grammar, could it possibly be confused? So yeah, if you're not online, you need to be. And, it's a huge opportunity for businesses. It really is.
Oh, definitely. And speaking of, opportunities for business, we were talking about campaigns earlier.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you, get your thoughts, or how effective do you think email campaigns are in this day and age? Because I think we kind of passed the golden age of that.
We have.
Yeah.
And so one of the things about email, I was just at a conference, and it was really interesting. They gave some recent data on some tests industry-wide that have been run. And so email on average has a 15% open rate. So just by emailing someone 15% of the time, you'll get someone to actually open the email. Out of that, you'll get a 3% click-through rate, which means that once someone opens up that email, to actually get them to take action, you're looking at 3% success.
Wow. So in order to yield results, you need to have a lot of emails.
Exactly. And you can kind of reverse engineer that. If you need 100 people, you'd better be sending out a ton of emails.
Oh yeah.
But again, it comes down to, the overall strategy and the overall approach that you would take into that. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are doing as well are SMS text campaigns. And with those kinds of campaigns, you do see a better yield, typically compared to email, which has a 15% open rate, 3% click-through rate. Text campaigns have a 90% open rate and a 7% click-through rate.
Oh.
So one of the things I like doing is I'll dovetail this with things that are called ringless voicemails. You may have gotten these before where all of a sudden you look down at your phone, you're like, I got a voicemail.
Oh,
That's
yeah, I've
weird.
seen that before.
They're called voice drops or ringless voicemails. Now, what I found really effective with these is if you dovetail all three of them. So if you do an email campaign and a text message, or let's say using the tattoo shop example, if someone were to come into the tattoo shop and I said, okay, well, we'd like you to sign up, can you give us a text message, or can you give us permission to text message you? Great. That goes into a database. You can set up a variety of automated systems. And so that 3 days from now, or even a day from now, I can say, hey, would you mind leaving us a review, and send them a text message with that. Leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. And you're not supposed to monetize it or provide any kind of incentive, but let's face it, that's a part of marketing, right?
Oh, exactly.
Providing some kind of incentive for people to, take part and participate. So you send out the text message campaign. You also send them an email at the same time. So now I'm hitting it on two fronts, where if they don't look at the text message, there's an email, and the email is always a reminder. What I can then do is 3 to 5 days, after that, I'd say, hey, if you haven't left us a review already, if you'd like to, if you wouldn't mind doing that, please take a moment. We've sent you an email about this. Check your spam folder if you haven't seen it. But now I'm hitting this on multiple fronts, and a lot of this can actually be automated. That way, it doesn't take away time from a business owner. You can actually go in and we can set up a variety of different triggers, so that we say, after 1 day, do this, after 2 days, do this, after 3 days, do this. And so it just sets off an entire series of events, so that the business owner doesn't have to take time away from their stuff. But from a consumer side, they actually feel like they're really being taken care of. Those text messages can all be customized. So it's like, hey, insert first name. Hey, Cameron, thanks for stopping by, insert business name, the other day. We really appreciate you taking a minute and leaving us a review. Give them a link to your Google My Business, review, and you're done. So from a business side, there's no extra labor on their side. It all comes down to setting up processes and things like that can help automate that from one step to the next.
And that sounds like an incredibly useful tool for anybody that's heavily reliant on repeat business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so since we're here on this subject, a lot of people do think, tech SMS campaigns and whatnot are kind of annoying and invasive. For me personally, it depends on what business is sending them to me.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on that? And what are some ideas you might have for making those text messages more welcomed?
So I think the big thing is that where a lot of people fail with SMS text campaigns is they don't provide incentive. If I said, hey, Cameron, take action on this particular, whatever I wanted you to do, and I'm going to give you a pat on the back, no one cares. They're not going to take action. But if I said, hey, if you can, if I sent you a text message and I was trying to drum up business, and I said, hey, Cameron, for every person, for every qualified lead that, you bring to me or that you can refer to me, just have them say, hey, Cameron referred me. I'm going to give you $100 Amazon gift card.
Oh,
now you've got some skin in the game.
Yeah, that raises the stakes.
Absolutely. And so businesses need to understand that, like, if you're going to send these kinds of campaigns, make it worthwhile for people. Don't screw around. Yeah. Don't screw around with like silly stuff that no one cares about. If you're going to send it out with a little bit of purpose. And, $100 find that sweet spot. If it was $50 or a $40 gift certificate, your ears may not perk up quite as much as $100, but if I can give you a lead that turns into a client, and again, it has to make sense for the business. If it's a, mechanic where their average ticket sale could be over $3,000 or $10,000, $40 isn't anything. $100 really isn't anything, depending on where your margins are at.
Exactly.
But if you're Taco Bell or, a local business providing a $100 gift card, maybe you would want to rethink that strategy and it's like, hey, for as many people that, you share this with so many people and you go into a random drawing for a $100 gift card. So, there's less incentive there for me personally, but, depending on what I want to do, I mean, that may or may not be worth my time.
Well, and it really just comes down to like, what's the word I'm looking for? Cost of customer acquisition. Say, just
Absolutely.
use real estate as an example. I stand to make $6,000 to $10,000 on one deal. I need one person to say yes to me to get that. So spending $100, on some kind of incentive to get a response from that lead is actually be worth it, even if I did that 4 or 5 times. When the average cost of an internet lead for real estate is about $500.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to look at it as spending $100 to $500 to make $6,000 to $10,000.
Exactly, and knowing your numbers is absolutely important. It surprises me to see how many people don't actually know what their customer acquisition cost is or lifetime value of a customer. For you, in the real estate business, lifetime value of that customer, they may be doing one house, or if you have referral, I mean, that can, knowing your numbers on that, what's the average referral rate? But I see a lot of people and they're like, I don't know what my customer's worth. And that's, to me, that is probably one of the most foundational things. In addition to having that strategy and the plan in place, you have to understand, like, how much do each of these clients cost to get?
Exactly. And it's very rarely free.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Even if it's not a direct cost, even if it's an indirect cost, it's very rarely free. It's going to cost you something.
Right. No lunch is free, ever.
Exactly. And another point I wanted to touch on too, when we were talking about thinking out through content and setting up your incentives, I'd like to apply that to even more stuff like Facebook posts. So I'm sure you see a lot of posts from like local businesses when the post just like a nothing post. They didn't really think about what it is they're doing. They didn't think about what the experience of the reader is going to be, what's going to make them think. Or bands do this a lot. They post "stay tuned," and that drives me nuts because it's like,
just tell me what you want. Yeah.
It's like, don't say anything until you have something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most content is moved more towards this quality over quantity, because again, like we're all so inundated by all of the content that's out there. I mean, I'd seen a couple things where you could literally, like with the content on YouTube, you could watch it for, I believe, 8 years straight, back to back, video after video, and still never consume all of it. And you're talking 8 years, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that kind of content for 8 years, and you would still not even like make a dent in it. There's so much content out there that when you are putting something out there, it needs to mean something.
Exactly. And you don't want to waste that sort of capital on nothing post. Or like in politics, politicians won't go after certain issues because they're saving that capital or cred or clout or whatever you want to call it for something they really do want to go after. And if you're depleting the attention space people are willing to give you naturally on things that aren't going to yield you anything that's really going to affect your strategy.
Absolutely.
So what is something that a local business person can do today for free to improve their online presence and positioning?
So one of the first things, again, I would always start with Google My Business. Let's be honest, like Google loves itself. And the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, they're like, hey, Google's kind of become this household name, kind of like Kleenex or, what's another one, like Kleenex or, Charmin. Netflix or something like that. So if we're talking, like a streaming service, you're probably going to say, yeah, I was on Netflix the other day. I mean, it could mean, it could mean Vudu, it could mean Hulu, it could be whatever, but Netflix is kind of this synonymous name with like buffering type services. Same thing with Kleenex. I mean, you would never say, I'm going to go get a facial tissue. You're going to say, I'm going to get a Kleenex.
Exactly.
Some people, Coke is another thing. Like some people call any kind of soda, depending on where you're at, geographically speaking. Some people say, yeah, we got a Coke the other day. It's like, you actually had a Dr. Pepper, but they're like, no, it was a Coke. Yeah. It's synonymous with soda for a lot of people. And so making your brand, ultimately the goal is to make your brand that household name. We don't say we're going to go search for something online. We're saying we're going to Google it. Right?
Yes.
And so you want to make sure that you're positioned in that manner. Google My Business. is a great way for local businesses to kind of get some traction on that. And one of the features that a lot of people don't leverage is Google My Business will actually, if you don't have a website, by all means, please do not use Facebook as your website. Horrible idea. What would be a better route for most businesses and a very free way to do it, set up your Google My Business, and on the left sidebar of your Google My Business dashboard, if you scroll down about halfway, there's a thing that says website. You can actually use Google My Business to create a very simple website. You can also use Google Sites, which is another way to do it. But you can create a very simple website, very minimal coding. It pulls all of your information in from Google My Business, and now you have a better web presence. I personally use that as a branded property, just no different than Twitter or Facebook, or Instagram or Snapchat or any of these other kinds of branded platforms. But I would use Google in that same manner, so that now it looks like I have this big footprint or this big presence online for any of my businesses. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the bigger the presence, the more synonymous you can make yourself with the brand or the particular term itself, the better off you're going to be. So don't neglect social. Don't do any of that. The other thing, this isn't a free it's not a free avenue, but do a little bit of advertising. Facebook ads or Google ads. It doesn't have to be much, but throwing 40 or 50 bucks into ads every month is going to help eat up some of that real estate on the page. And depending on where someone's at in that buyer journey, if they're just looking for the random person, and let's say you don't have great SEO, ads can help you get in front of people that you otherwise wouldn't be in front of. You can actually start to compete with competitors. And I do this just as a professional marketer. I'll bid on my competitors' terms. So let's say you were going into competition with, a real estate, let's say Remax or someone like that in the area. I would actually bid on Remax. The keyword Remax.
So it helps jack up the cost for them.
Not necessarily I mean, that's one thing, but the other thing that it can do is now if someone's looking for a Remax realtor, I'm now being shown in that search. In the ads, it's paid, but what can happen is now I can actually because the SEO component of that may take some time and effort. Whereas ads, it's like turning on the faucet. I can now, depending on how much I'm willing to pay for those clicks, I can actually be shown as an alternative for them at the top. Google, get one thing, Google is a paid advertising engine. They're an advertiser. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to make ads more prominent than organic search, because organic's free. Exactly. And they don't make any money off that. By paying them, you're also changing the dynamic of how your business is being seen. So rather than being seen as just someone that's trying to get free organic listings, which ultimately at the end of the day, I would also work that angle as well. But by paying for ads, you're no longer lazy and a mooch off of Google. You've become their customer.
Oh, and they're going to look out for you.
And so exactly, there have been a variety of different tests that, do ads affect search engine? Now, in and of themselves, ads won't. But what happens is that it changes the dynamic of you actually, when you're doing paid search, Google, you can set your ads up in a way that Google will actually send you vetted traffic to that paid ad. They're called in-market segments. And essentially what that says is Google obviously has a lot of click data. They understand exactly what people have been clicking on. They know the search history, because if you're using Chrome, Google tracks everything you do. Even in incognito, Google knows what you're doing. And so Google already understands, like, if let's say you were looking at, let's say you were looking at a variety of different electronics. Let's say you were looking at a new PlayStation, and then you started clicking over at eBay to look for PlayStations, and then you clicked over to Best Buy, and you clicked over here, and you just kind of price shopping. What Google recognizes is you're in market to pick up a new PlayStation or video game console. So if I'm advertising and I set up my ads to say in market segments, people that are most likely to buy or most likely to convert, and I had, Tom's Emporium of Electronics or whatever, I can show my ad, and Google will actually show you my ad because it recognizes you're in the market to buy. So what better place for me to advertise than someone that Google already recognizes, hey, this guy's wanting to spend money. If we can make the ad enticing, the price is on point with what, where, kind of where the market sits, and my ad can now be served to that. Again, I'm Google's client now, so their job is to show my ad to the most relevant group of people. Now, there's a variety of different strategies that you can employ with this. Some of them driving traffic back to your website, driving traffic to particular places that you want on the web. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Google is now sending me traffic that they personally, through their algorithm, have vetted.
Okay. And that's a excellent segue into my next question. Okay, so I got my SEO set up. I got my website set up. Everything's looking great. I've gone through my budget. What are some thoughts on interesting ways to transition a lead from an online interaction to an online interaction to an offline interaction?
So the big thing that I would look at is a multifaceted approach. You have to think about it through, there are the 4 stages of the buyer journey, or really 5. So you have awareness. I don't know who you are. I'm just going to search for something. Then you have interest. This may be, okay, so I know who you are now, and I'm interested in your services. So what information can I find out about you? From there, I typically move into a process called consideration. I would look at your reviews. I would look at what other kinds of social proof. What are people saying on Facebook and Twitter about you, and these other kinds of things? From there, I move into the decision-making process. Okay, everything checks out. I like your reviews. I like what you're having to say, the kind of offer that you've got. Now I'm going to move into a decision where I'm going to call you up and say, hey, Cameron, I'd like to do business with you. Here's what my problem or my solution is. I think the big thing that a lot of people need to focus on is focus on solutions. A lot of people tend to do this whole pitchy kind of like buy. But if you can focus on solutions where, let's say you're, again, using your realty business as an example, I help people find homes. I help people find the best home for their budget. Ideally, we found so-and-so a house for $375,000. It was right at their target budget, or even slightly below that. These are the kind of people that we just love helping. So now if I'm in that market segment, you're definitely more appealing than the guy that, again, is that Me Too agency or the Me Too company that's like, oh, we help everyone. Exactly. You've given me that proof. You've shown me some reason for me to trust you as the specific kind of problem that I'm trying to solve. I need a house that's under $375,000 or under $200,000 or whatever the case might be, or over $375,000. If I'm looking at $1 million plus house, is that something you offer? How can we make that happen? I think the other thing is that people just don't like being sold to.
Oh, definitely.
So, the more you can provide it, and one of the most interesting things that's super counterproductive or counterintuitive, if you want to think about it this way. But I see a lot of people that'll do like YouTube videos, and people are like, why would I tell people like all of this information about my business? And the thing I find is that the more information you can give, obviously you don't want to give away, proprietary type secrets, but right. The more information, if you could say, here's how to get your ducks in a row before you talk to a realtor. Here are 10 things that you need to make sure are in a row, and just give it away. I mean, give it away for the price of an email. That way you can build your list. But here's 10 things that you need to do to get your credit in line and ducks in a row before you even talk to me. I want to make sure that you have these things in a row. And they're things that could potentially help them out. How to fix your credit, how to make sure that you're properly positioned, and that you're pre-qualified for any specific type of loan. What kind of loans are out there? What's the difference between them? And giving them that information, what you've now done is you've empowered that particular user or that end customer. And now they come to you with a more educated position. And they're, in a lot of cases, unless it's something that they specifically have to do on their end. In a lot of cases, they're going to be like, man, this is a huge pain in my butt. Can you just help me with it? You seem very knowledgeable about this. Can you just help me with it? So the more information you can provide to people that helps them along that journey, a lot of times I see that coming back, especially in my business, to people that actually are like, hey, you look very knowledgeable. You sound very knowledgeable. You want to show me X, Y, and Z. Well, I just don't have time to do that. Is that a service you offer? And the more information you can help people along with that journey, it's amazing. It comes back to you in the form of business, rather than pitching it and be like, hey, you should sign up for my service. You should sign up for my service.
Oh,
that
exactly.
just turns people off.
People hate that. Mm-hmm. And well, paired with what you were saying too, I like to go for more like the show approach where, so for example, like on my personal Facebook and other avenues, I'm not posting sales pitches. I don't like to say, call me today, that sort of thing. One thing I've had a lot of success with, paired with that, providing that sort of preliminary value to the customer, is sort of just sharing out interesting things from being on the job. A good example, I actually got a really good deal off this right before coronavirus hit. I was helping out a friend. He inherited a dilapidated house. There was a broken down school bus in the backyard. Trees were going around it. The tires were flat. We had to figure out how to get this thing out of there. I'm sharing pictures of it, doing that thing, explaining the story. I'm not making a sales pitch to nobody. And the reaction and engagement I got just off sharing this thing that's happening to me at work, this challenge that I'm overcoming, that was more than any paid ad could really do. And I've actually scored a deal off that. That was a $0 or zero cost customer.
Absolutely.
Just by sharing the sort of things from the first customer. And people like to see that because it's real.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that understanding that as a part of your content, as far as the content strategy, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that your day-to-day interactions, that's kind of what people care about. You could potentially do the ads, and I'm not going to say that doesn't help, but the thing that's interesting with the day-to-day is that you can, how many times do you have people that come up to you and they're like, it's the same question. I'm sure that any business owner could list at least a dozen things where they're like, I always get asked this question. Turn that into content. Turn that into here. A common question we get asked is, what do you do here? That goes right into your content calendar. You can show people exactly what this is, show them your day-to-day experiences. Like, this is what it's like in a day in the life of a realtor in Northern Colorado, and show them the different kinds of things that you do, the kinds of things like this school bus that, that's not a real common thing people run into, but
exactly,
definitely worth sharing. And you can segment that out into, okay, so day one, we had to figure out what the heck we're going to do. Day two, okay, so we have a plan. What we're going to do is we're going to try and X, Y, and Z. Here you go. And so now you have you could build an entire content strategy for a couple of weeks around that, or a couple of days, or however long it takes you to manage that. But there are content opportunities out there. So one thing I would also recommend with any business owner is get a notebook, or you can use a variety of tools. I use one called ClickUp. You can use a free tool called Trello. And what I like with any of these is it's a content repository, or kind of like a content cache. If you have an idea, jot it down. Don't let that escape you, because what's going to end up happening is with any of the content, you jot it down and you can come back to it. So let's say, again, you have the 3-month cache, or the 3-month reserve of content. Well, what can end up happening is, as you go back into, let's say you're struggling for content ideas, you can go back to that cache, go back to your journal, go back to the Trello board or any of that, and then just go look for stuff. So if you're stumped on an idea, oh, that was a great idea, I had that, and we're just going to build off of this particular idea. So you're never without content. You've always got something you can jump back into and refer to.
Oh, that's so important too. Which leads right into my next question. What would you recommend any entrepreneur, how much content should they have in the bank ready to go before they even present and get started?
So I always recommend at least 2 to 4 weeks. just have at least that much content. And depending on the frequency that you want to publish at, that can really vary. I personally like doing, like if I have a variety of services, I like having at least 5 articles or 5, blog posts for each one of those. That's what I always
recommend for web design people.
Absolutely. At least 5 articles for each subtopic. So if we're talking, again, the mechanic, let's say they talk about like doing domestic cars, I would want 5 articles about domestic auto repair. If they do foreign, I want at least 5 domestic, 5 foreign. If they're doing like oil changes, I want 5 maybe car maintenance tips that are revolving around oil changes or something like that. Now this can all be outsourced, and that, again, I want to stress that like, if you're not a wordsmith, if you're a business owner and your sole focus is, I need to focus on growing my business and making sure the day-to-day operations is there's a variety of different things. I mean, you can get writers to, craft this kind of content with you. It's not that expensive.
Oh, exactly. I've done that before too. It's like sometimes you just don't feel like writing. You just want to bullet points and stuff, send it over. $30 an article is, sure. I got a lady who does it for me for $30 an article. I guess the prices can vary.
And they can. It depends on what the kind of content is. And to be honest, like with most businesses, one of the most effective, I'll give you one of my inside kind of tricks here. So go to Google Docs, and if you're on your phone, do the voice transcription. I mean, you can rattle stuff off and just talk to it. And it'll actually transcribe everything. If you're on a desktop, it actually has the same engine. If you have a microphone on your laptop, if you're on a PC, I believe it's Control-Shift-S, and that actually engages the voice engine. Mac, I believe it may be Control-Option-S.
Yeah, I think you have to just enable dictation first.
Yeah. Well, no, within Google Drive, if you go to Tools, there's actually voice in there. So you don't need to enable anything. Tools, and then there's a voice translator or a voice to text kind of thing. It's built right into Drive. And so you'll have to enable your mic settings. So just allow your mic to be able to pick up how you're talking. And what I'll do is I can create a blog as long as I have the research done, or at least the bullet points highlighted, I can create a blog in about 30 minutes.
Nice.
And it's just, you're just talking to it.
And one thing I'd like to put out there for, anybody listening or, is thinking about getting a blogs or doing some blogs and putting those out there, really take the time to think about what you're writing and how useful is this to the reader.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's really going to make or break it. If you are providing some kind of free value to them, answering some kind of question, giving them some kind of new idea, that's going to take you so much further than just sort of throwing up information into a couple of paragraphs and sticking it up there.
For sure. 100%.
And so what kind of content do you think yields the best sort of results? So we're talking video, audio, what are you thinking?
So what I would always recommend is hit it on as many avenues as you possibly can. I know you do a lot of audio, Cameron, as well. And one of the things that I would do is I would do a video. I would then have someone strip the audio or rip the audio from that video. Now I have a podcast. You can take that podcast and have it transcribed so that all of the audio becomes text. Now you have a blog post. All of those get thrown back into the blog, and then you promote that via social, and you can hit that from a variety of different angles. Say if we have that video, I can also chop that into 10 to 15 second clips. And now I have a ton of stuff like Gary Vee style, where it's like, you take this little excerpt or this clip, and I can, on a 5-minute video, I've got, 20 plus pieces of content, depending on where I want to splice things out and chop them up. So
exactly. And
I call it content juicing, but I'm essentially taking that one video and I'm converting that into multiple pieces of content that all drive back to my singular blog. So you don't have to create 20 different blogs. You could create 20 bits of content from one blog, and then you move on to your next blog. Like we were talking about, 5 blogs per service or per product. And so I've got, at that point now, I've got, 100 pieces of content that I can share. My entire queue and cache is built up with a variety of different content mediums, and I'm ready. I'm ready to start pushing it out and promoting. one thing that businesses really should focus on as well is, if you have one blog, don't assume that just because you've shared it on social once, that that's enough.
Oh yeah, you got to keep getting it out
Reshare
there.
it
Repetition.
and reshare it. Exactly. The average lifespan of a tweet, I believe, is around 2 minutes, and Facebook is 6 minutes for a post.
And then it's just gone. Unless it blows up, it's just gone.
Exactly. And so if it's something that you want to continually promote for someone, re-promote it. Obviously, you don't want them back to back. You want to mix it up. So you have, maybe your featured content or the content that you're trying to promote, maybe some industry related stuff, some things that you find interesting. Memes are always good. They tend to get great reaction out of people. Maybe a highlight, a video, a short little clip, maybe a live session, then hit that bit of content that, you're trying to feature again. So you can continue to recycle this. In the industry, we call this evergreen content. You want to make sure it's just not time sensitive when you're doing that. Obviously, no one wants to see a post about Christmas in June, right?
Exactly.
But if it's auto maintenance, or if it's about like tips to improve your credit in the realty business, that's something that, can continue to be used throughout the year. You continue to promote that, say, hey, here's this bit of content I wrote. Check this out. Here's a white paper. Just give me your email, those kinds of things where you're just now providing value, or you're sharing that on your social feeds.
And I think that's something a lot of people really overlook. Like, I would just like to use this video as an example for the listeners, if you don't mind. Like, what I plan to do is I'm obviously going to put this up on YouTube and whatnot is the basic, but I can then also cut this up into clips answering specific questions, using that question as the title. We take the audio, put it up on SoundCloud, upload it to podcasts. And, there's just so much you can get out of it. And, you've inspired me here today even to, transcribe this and start working this into text to help answer questions and, give people ideas. And the amount of content we're getting today, we've been on for about an hour now.
Yep.
The amount of content we can get just out of this video for both our businesses is pretty astronomical.
It is. And so also with the another couple sites here you might want to check out, Otter, like the animal.io, you can actually transcribe audio for free. They have a limitation on the free version, but you can actually dump in the audio. It'll transcribe it. Works great. You can do the same thing with YouTube. Upload the video, make it unlisted, but YouTube will actually transcribe it for you. You may have to go and tweak a couple things. And then there's a company called rev.com, rev.com. And that will actually, I believe it's like $1 a minute. You send it over to them.
A real person does it?
Yes, it's $1 a minute. It's a real person. They actually transcribe it. They send back the written content based on whatever audio or video that you provided. It's a full transcription service. But I mean, that again is where that outsourcing kind of thing comes in. I could do it myself, and I could probably transcribe it. It would take me maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long the video is. Or for $10, I can upload it to Rev on a 10-minute video and say, go to town. I go kick back, have a beer, do whatever I want. And I'm like, for $10, I mean, the job's done.
Oh,
so
exactly.
That's where working smarter and not harder really can come into effect, and understanding where you can outsource things to that are quality, that can still yield results, but using your time more effectively.
Oh, definitely. And watch out for stuff too. Like, really make sure you're looking for the quality. I've ran into like on Fiverr, there's a lot of people repurposing open source AIs to, transcribe or even generate articles, and it's just awful.
Yeah.
So you really look into who you're outsourcing to prior to outsourcing.
Absolutely.
So speaking of mistakes like that, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make while trying to set up their web presence by themselves, or kind of like trying to do their own dental work?
So one of the first things, obviously, no, they aren't planning. They don't understand what the customer is actually looking for. That you have to understand that and kind of get inside the mind of a customer. The best way I found that to do that is there are two methods that I personally employ. One of them is send it to your mom or to your grandma and ask them, like, okay, can you find this? Maybe even give her a cocktail or two, and be like, okay, now that we're feeling a little loosened up here, send her to your website, figure out, or ask her to go and do a task. I want you to tell me about my industry. What are the questions that you have? And odds are you're going to find a lot of things that as a business owner, you're maybe a little too close to. It's called the curse of knowledge, but you may be too close to the industry that you start throwing out jargon. You know, in the SEO industry, we're all about acronyms. So search engine optimization, SEO, search engine marketing, SEM. I mean, we have all of these acronyms that most people, if I were to tell them what I do, I'm a search engine optimization specialist or SEO, and I do blah, 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 blah. Their eyes glaze over and they're like, I have no idea what the hell you just said.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, yeah. And at that point they just shut down. Whereas if you can say, hey, I help businesses be seen on Google, that becomes a little bit more like, oh, okay. Or if I can say, hey, I help businesses get qualified leads, even better. You know, now that opens up the dialogue. Well, how do you do that? Well, I use X, Y, and Z. But the mom test works really, really well, especially on existing websites. Have her go and try and find something. Pull up Macy's.com and say, okay, I want you to find a skirt, or I want you to find a new blouse, and watch her. Like, okay, so she's going over. Is it easy to find? Is it easy to navigate? What's that look like? That to me is one route to go about doing it. You can ask people for different suggestions, problems, and things like that they commonly run into with your particular industry. Just ask. That's one of the best things to do. One of the other common mistakes I see with people is that they want to control their own marketing and their own budget. So again, as soon as you can, hire someone that's qualified. Get out of your own way, because 9 times out of 10, what I see with a lot of businesses is the business owner becomes the bottleneck. And that's why you're not getting content out there. That's why you're not pushing, leads. It's why you're not getting additional phone calls. Because if you're focusing on these different avenues and these different aspects of things, you're probably getting in the way of your own success, and you're not focusing on the things that are actually driving money back to your business. So those are the things that I commonly see. And then also reviews. I mean, I'll be honest, reviews suck to try and get. Typically out of every 20 reviews, I typically see one person that out of every review request, I should say, out of every 20, I typically see one person that'll actually say, oh yeah, I'll take the time to leave you a review. That doesn't mean that it's a worthless effort, because it's been proven time and time again, the more reviews, the more social proof that you have, people really like to, identify and understand that this is the business that I want to work with. But you've got to put it out there. And that's again where some kinds of automation can come into play. There really isn't any substitute though for picking up the phone. You can get them so far through automated techniques, but then just pick up the phone, make that personal connection with someone. And when you do that, I tend to see that works really well for businesses, because you are in fact then, as we talked about earlier, bridging that gap between, we've got you so far virtually, let's actually make the connection, in the real world, and see what I can do to actually help you.
Oh, especially in my industry too. It's amazing how many realtors just don't want to pick up the phone, and that's something you got to do.
Yeah.
You got to make,
no way around
that
it.
extra effort and, connect directly. And it's hard. It really is hard, but It's worth it in the end.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being here today. I think this was a really educational conversation, and I think any of our listeners can get a lot of value out of it. Can you tell people how to get a hold of you, how to contact you, how to see what you do?
Yeah. So my website is fusionvine.com. If you Googled Loveland SEO, you can find me that way as well. If you want to reach out via email, hello@fusionvine.com. Or you can reach me by phone, 720-515-6188.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Brian. It's been awesome.
Cool. Thank you.